Using a secondary source, an instructional video on how to look critically at secondary sources. With secondary sources, it is crucial that you cover your bases. This means considering the creator's bias, analyzing your source by observing, reflecting, and questioning. Remain skeptical as you analyze, and then evaluate to determine what is useful and relevant information to you. Finally, synthesize your own opinion from what you've learned. Let's take a look at a secondary source together. This source comes from historyonthenet.com. The first step is to look for bias. This particular website favors women and children and lacks information about men. The next step of covering your bases is analyzing your source. This means you need to observe, reflect, and ask questions about the source. One question that comes to my mind is, who is the author? I know this source is from History on the Net group, but who actually does the writing, and what credentials do they have? I also observed these tables showing the rations. I'm curious, where does this ration information come from? What primary source did the History on the Net group use? Finally, I observed photographs on the page. However, I don't see any dates. Are they from the time period I'm interested in? The next part of covering your bases is remaining skeptical. Remaining skeptical means you shouldn't assume what you're looking at is valid information. Now it's time to evaluate your source. You should check to see the date it was published, or in this case on a website, the date it was edited. You should also look and see what kind of web address you're working with. If it has a .gov or a .edu, it means that your website is part of a government or educational database. This makes your site a more reliable source of information. The final step of covering your bases is to synthesize, which means form your own opinion based on the valid information you gathered through the process of analyzing a secondary source.